Welcome to Turek Books Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Joshua Turek. We're never going to read all the books we want, but when someone tells us about a book, that's its own valid form of experiencing it. Our guests come in to talk about the books that left lasting marks on them as readers, and that becomes a springboard to who they are, who I am, and maybe who all of us are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. And who knows, maybe you'll end up grabbing a book or two. Maybe you've read some of them, and it's nice to hear someone else talk about them. We want this to be like a book club, but without the guilt. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Turek Books Podcast. I'm so excited for our guest today. She's a frequent collaborator of mine, one of my favorite writers, comedians, and host of the Grifthorse Podcast, Megan Koester.
Sadly, yes. Sadly, I also have a podcast.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a podcast if the guest didn't have a podcast.
That's true. Although I will say this is my first video podcast.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's how fucking old I am. Can I say fuck?
Yeah.
That's how fucking old I am.
Yeah, PBS hasn't picked up Turek Books yet.
I don't know if like your Doritos sponsorship is going to fall through if I say fucking.
Yeah, the California lottery. Oh, I guess that is something to bring up to the listeners. Yeah, thanks to you, we qualified for ads. So because there's enough listeners, you now have to suffer through ads. But it does help us because we like pay our show's editor and stuff. So it's much appreciated. Now, back to the podcast.
So you're saying there could be ethical consumption under capitalism?
No.
Question mark? Oh, okay,
no,
great.
Absolutely not.
Fantastic.
I'm just always having that conversation in my head about who I'm exploiting and why, even at the most bare bones of circumstances.
Right.
Ethical consumption, no.
No, that's why I don't consume anything.
That's the way. Yeah.
A lot of people will act like, like I must be miserable. But no.
No.
I mean, not buying pour over coffee, it doesn't make me miserable.
Yeah, you can live with it.
I refuse to take like Ubers, Lyfts, things of this nature.
There's probably a clarity in you from that, right? From abstaining.
It's like, if I can't get there through traditional methods or, unorthodox methods, and traditional methods, I mean driving my own vehicle or walking there, I don't need to be there. It's the same as, the airport in Burbank. Yeah. If I can't get somewhere from the Burbank airport, I don't need to be there.
That's a nice way of looking at life. And that's like the great alternative airport in Los Angeles area.
Yes.
For anyone who doesn't know.
2 terminals, blissful.
Blissful, yeah.
Just blissful. They got a Guy Fieri restaurant.
In the Burbank airport?
They sure do, yeah. And I will say, I think they're called garbage can nachos. I mean, it's not true from the advertising. It's the opposite.
Really?
Garbage can nachos in the upper echelon of nachos I've ever had in my entire life.
No kidding.
Yeah. Trash can nachos, excuse me.
Trash can.
I guess trash is more palatable than garbage.
Yeah.
But the trash can nachos at the Burbank airport in the Guy Fieri restaurant, chef's kiss.
There's your Yelp review, folks. You ever find yourself there, don't shy away.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember I went to your house one time and you were making your own kombucha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still on that trip.
You are?
Mm-hmm.
You've got the mason jars.
Wait, I got a jug actually from abroad off Craigslist now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it's still popping.
Yeah, and that major kombucha brand was just hit with a bunch of like worker exploitation news. So you really are doing it right. I complain about like capitalism on the internet all the time, and one of the comments I got recently was like, stop buying things, start foraging food.
Yeah.
And so I looked into like food foraging in Los Angeles, which is something that's always been on my outer radar. And yeah, there's all these classes you could take. Mm-hmm. The hills are abundant with like,
Well, even easier than that would be dumpster diving. But the fucked up thing about Los Angeles is they lock all their dumpsters here.
Damn.
So I've had success like going out to Covina and stuff. But then you got to schlep all the way to Covina.
So they even gatekeep the dumpsters here.
Gatekeep the dumpsters here, yeah. And
they sell you the trash can nachos.
Whole Foods specifically, they make sure they have a trash compact, like an enormous compacting thing. So they like crush it into a cube so no one can enjoy it. Oh my
God.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because also everyone gets sued here. I worked at an all-you-could-eat buffet restaurant when I was younger, and they couldn't give their extra food at the end of the day to people who need it because they were afraid of being sued.
Right. We're a litigious society.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but at what cost?
Yeah. Well, and is that like litigiousness there to keep reinforcing excess?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm very I don't buy anything. I find everything just sort of comes to you.
How's your reading life these days? Have you been reading a lot?
I do read a lot, because I don't watch television.
Okay.
Because I refuse to pay for the apps.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So I do read a lot. I read a lot. I read a lot on I got an iPad from a certified public accountant in like Monrovia for free off Craigslist.
For free.
Yeah. So
That's
I get books from the library, and then I also illegally download books that are already out of print.
Okay.
So nobody's losing any money.
Yeah. We're talking almost public domain. It's just that gray area.
I mean, if I was going to buy a used copy from like Abe Books or Thrift Books, it's not like the author's getting any money.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're pirating books.
Yeah, I pirate books, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
And I read a lot of... you can check out magazines from the library, so, like sometimes if... Instead of staring into... Well, this is essentially the same thing as staring into the void, but instead of staring into the void, staring at something, I'll read like Star Magazine.
Nice.
On my iPad.
From like 1997 or...
No, from now.
Oh, from now. Okay. Okay, it all still exists.
Yeah, it's still there, yeah.
Okay. Just Midwestern grocery stores. I haven't been in one in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And the iPad, they say, like our last couple guests ago, Cam and Peter, they were saying like it kind of emulates the scroll that you would be doing on your phone. So you kind of get to hit that addiction, but actually maybe take
like
in
learn
something something that thought was involved in gathering.
Yeah, the last thing I read on my iPad was like 2 nights ago. It's this out of print book that was published in, I don't know, maybe 2009 or something, called Opium for the Masses, about there's a lot about like the history of opium and opium use and demonization and like criminalization against it. But then there's also just like a very matter-of-fact way of how to make opium, or how to make poppy tea. And we live in California, and there's so many wild poppies everywhere, and it's very easy.
You can do it with the California poppies?
Not the state poppy.
Right. That's our state flower.
Those little tiny ones. Yeah. But there's like different varieties of poppy. The ones that have like a very large, I don't know. It's like a large circular. I don't know anything about
bulb.
Yeah.
Large
Like
bulb.
like a bulb. You gotta like dry. All you do is like you dry it.
We talking bulbs here?
You're talking bulb. You like dry the bulb in the stem. You cut the bulb off, and then you kind of like make a slit. You like get all the seeds out, and then you just grind the shit up in like a coffee grinder, and then just essentially make tea out of it. And it's like a very low grade opiate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like soothing. I haven't done this yet.
Once again, a thought experiment. We're not recommending it.
Of course, yeah.
We're not saying if
I will say I haven't done this yet.
Right.
I can say that for sure. I will say also in terms of thought experiments, it is very easy to grow mushrooms in your home. And you can buy the spores to do so online, and they will send them directly to your house.
Really?
Yes.
Like psilocybin mushrooms?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you're getting ready to opt out of any anesthesiology the next surgery you have.
Which probably is a good thing since I'm an alcoholic, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So
they don't give you, once they find out that you're an alcoholic, they don't give you any fun substances.
Really? Even if they have to put you under? Or?
I mean, probably if they have to put you under. But like if you say I broke a leg or something, they probably wouldn't give me, anything fun.
Yeah. So just as your last resort, you could just wheel out there and grab some poppies and dry them up.
Yeah. The dried poppies that you can make poppy tea, but then also you can just get straight opium from the fresh flowers too.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's an abundance around us. We just have to pay attention to it. We just have to take note of our environment.
I'm sorry I'm saying so many
No, the world does
things.
The world does give you everything you need.
It does.
Yeah, and especially the natural world. And people forget that pharmaceuticals mostly come from the natural world, but then they get disguised in these little pills so that we feel like we need... Or
it's a synthetic version of something that's already naturally occurring.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, the massive Western scrub out of the natural world continues. Yeah. So, no, I love this information. Yeah, you're bringing... this is good Turek Books info. So,
okay, great.
Doesn't mean you have to use it. It's just
just
good.
a thought
It's just good to
experiment.
know.
It's
yeah.
just yeah, exactly.
It's a podcast for the curious mind. So I mean, I
'Cause,
could go on and on.
Growing weed, it's too labor intensive. And
Growing
also, I don't
weed.
even smoke weed. Although,
Right.
I mean, I will say, let's say I might grow mushrooms. I wouldn't even ingest them really most of the time if I did. I just use them for bartering purposes, or would use them for bartering purposes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you? There's just so many directions I can go with that. I feel like we're almost just like we're now catching up.
Right.
You and I.
Right. We are. We haven't seen each other in quite a long time.
Yeah, I know. We're like frequent collaborators, but pretty infrequent if you add up all the years to when we've made videos together.
Although I will say, numerically, I haven't made that many shorts in my life.
That's the frequent part.
And then therein lies the frequency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Compared to others. But I think the last one you and I made, it was like right in the heat of the pandemic. You had been going up into the Hollywood Hills with a fruit picker to pull avocados off of rich people's trees that were otherwise neglected.
Correct.
And were nice enough to let me join you. And I brought my dad's old video camera and we made a really cool piece. And we went inside these abandoned kind of old 1950s style homes.
Yeah, I was obsessed with not breaking in, because it's not like they were even locking the doors, just walking into abandoned houses. Because during the pandemic, construction stopped.
Right.
Yeah.
And these houses that were like about to get torn down weren't. And so we got to kind of wander around and see some really beautiful sights. And we got a lot of avocados that night.
I think we got like 30.
We got like 30. I felt human greed bubble up in me, because suddenly I was like, let's get more. Wait, fill up the bag, Well,
because the street value on these things.
I mean,
you're picking currency off a tree.
That's right.
And it's nothing to these people. They're just letting them fall on the ground.
And all the suffering that goes into like cultivating avocados in other places.
Oh, yeah.
You get to kind of skip that part of the chain.
Right. I mean, the suffering that goes into just, agriculture in general. Like, I'm from Central California, where they, grow the shit that we eat.
Yeah.
And so, you see everybody get cancer, get their backs fucked up, being exploited, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if you're vegan, like, you're still, by virtue of like buying produce, you are creating suffering, in this form human.
That makes me think even Farmer's Market, one of my favorite farmers, he was like, yeah, we're like 9th generation. I was like, oh, that's pretty close to the bone right there. Well, what was that 9th generation doing to get that farm,
Right.
It's like, yeah, you could go through the generations to, it's tough. It's tough if you think about things too much.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
It's better to just mindlessly consume is the lesson here. All right. Well, speaking of consumption, what did you bring today? Like, is there anything you kind of wanted to lead with as far as your books?
I brought all books that are either about or just literally magazines.
Cool.
I'm a big magazine fan, and I mourn the loss of them. We don't really have magazines anymore. But when I was, like in high school, junior high school, early 20s, like I was really into I love magazines because they're like so ephemeral, It's like you can read incredibly amazing writing in them, but they're designed to be disposed of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when it comes to like what inspired me to be a writer, I mean, it's pretty much magazines, specifically Spy Magazine, which I brought this book that I bought I either got it at Barnes & Noble or Borders. When I was from when I was in high school to maybe my mid to early 20s, whatever, I made my living committing return fraud at Borders and Barnes & Noble. And so I acquired the Spy Magazine book.
I don't want you to stop or I would investigate more. So what in Spy Magazine appealed to you?
Okay, so Spy Magazine was like sort of a very mean-spirited satirical magazine in the 80s and early 90s that they just... there's just something about like the spy style that really like appealed to me and like inspired me. Like, they would refer to someone who is currently a comedian as a former comedian.
Right.
They're the ones that called like Donald Trump like a short-fingered vulgarian, et cetera, et cetera. Like they were always like fucking with, society and pleasantry. But also, I mean, they had the ability to do that because they were like rich guys that weren't really beholden to anybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was their own publication?
Yeah. They started their own publication.
Like a vanity press?
Well, yeah. Well, they got a bunch of money from like their rich friends. And then one of the dudes, like his dad was like full on the head of Raytheon at the time. That put money
as
into
they
it.
are.
And so they had this very like no sacred cows, like kind of like fuck the world kind of mentality that was very appealing to me.
Every artist doing something fun at scale has a parent
Yes.
working for the military industrial complex.
Yeah. And I never like I read this book when I was young, but it never really like hit me that because I kind of do the same sort of no sacred cows thing, but like I'm also powerless.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, oh yeah, they could get away with it because they were rich.
Yeah.
But they did shit like they did a lot. There was a lot of it was fact based, and a lot of it was like investigative. They sent someone into Bohemian Grove,
Yeah.
like to break into Bohemian Grove, basically, and stand around and see what happens.
Was it John Ronson?
No,
Okay.
this was like in the early '90s. They took it took a year for them to compile all this information, but in the early '90s, like CAA was like very secretive about who their clients were. They collected a list of all of the clients. And then when they published it, like Mike Ovitz lost his fucking mind.
No way.
Yeah.
Why was a talent agency secretive of their clients? Did you ever?
I think just because that was like right when CAA started.
Okay.
So I think just like secretiveness was part of their
Yeah.
shtick,
Okay. They didn't want people stealing and also probably that was like the big celebrity time. So there was probably they didn't want fan letters and God knows what else.
Yeah.
Well, I read this book called Them by John Ronson, who's like a British kind of humor
I know who John
journalist.
Ronson is, yeah.
And he infiltrated Bohemian Grove, which is like where all the rich CEOs go up to burn an owl, like a wooden owl.
Piss on a tree. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
they all piss on
Kissinger would be up there piss on a tree and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the way they snuck in was that they just pretended they dressed like they were rich people.
Yeah, this is what this guy did.
Oh, okay, under the assumption that like the security guards aren't about to like tell Henry Kissinger he can't walk through the gate.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Male only.
If only
of course.
someone had told Henry Kissinger he couldn't walk through the gate. Unless it's the gate of hell, then by all means. Yeah, okay. So that caught your eye as like a teenager,
Yes.
Spy magazine?
Well, yeah. Well, no, I mean, it might have been early 20s.
Because I've
or
actually
something.
never read it, I don't think.
I have a shitload of copies if you want to borrow it.
Yeah, I'd like
I'm
to.
doing a very bad job of describing it.
No, I don't think you are at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's just like there was just something about its sensibility that was just like very, I don't know. It taught me that like, you don't it wasn't precious, and it was just everything they wrote was like potentially litigious.
Nice.
And I like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of like petty stuff about, famous people.
Disruptive. Yeah. Well, that's actually why I wasn't like super motivated to bring any books for this conversation. I don't know why. I haven't had a lot of time to read. I start a book podcast and then I don't get to read. But I brought Schopenhauer. Is that how you say his name?
I think so.
Yeah. So he's like an older philosopher, but he's like so cutting. He's so cynical. He tells it like it is. This book, The Art of Literature, is like his take on what makes literature great, what makes a writer great, and what makes them not great. And he's just like so pessimistic in like such an artful way. Mm-hmm. And I thought I didn't know if you'd ever read any of him, but I thought he kind of like reminded me of part of your sensibility, which is like very like kind of seeing through to the truth of things even when it's not pleasant for everyone.
Right. Exactly. That's a good way of describing Spy. Yeah.
Spy as well.
And also, like Gawker reminded me a lot of Spy too.
Yeah.
Where it's just like the only place that had, like the balls to publish the truth, but truth that could potentially get you sued for libel.
Right. Well, yeah, the media is set up so that you're not saying anything ugly to the mass agenda.
Yeah.
And if it is ugly, it fits within what they want to show people, right?
Right.
And yeah, so it is cool when people's parents have a lot of money if they do put something out that's a little edgy.
An ironic thing about Spy is that the editors were this dude, Kurt Anderson and Graydon Carter. And after Spy, Graydon Carter went on to become the editor of Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair, yeah.
Yes. And in the process became part of this like disgusting, unethical Hollywood machine that Spy would like rally against.
No
like
kidding.
He even like wouldn't let them publish shit about Epstein. Like
No
level
kidding.
of
Wow.
So that's a fun facet.
Yeah, it
of all
almost
of this.
makes you wonder if like it was like to them just like a joke.
I guess it's a lark until you like actually have access to those levels of power, and then maybe when you actually do have access to that power and you have that power, then it corrupts you.
Yeah.
It depends on the person too, I guess.
It does, but usually the person who doesn't get corrupted, we don't hear about them.
Yeah. Well,
They
no,
disappear.
Kurt Anderson didn't get corrupted, and now like he
knew-
occasionally writes books, but
I knew who Graydon Carter was, but I didn't know who Kurt Anderson is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I love it.
Okay, but then even earlier than that, this book, well, it's Roller Derby, which is a zine that I really liked from the early 90s. That was something that was, quite important to me.
Can I see it?
Yeah. This is a book that's a compilation of like a series of the zines from the time.
Derby.
Oh yeah, I forgot this is a video podcast.
No, I mean it doesn't matter. It's just, it's just
And it was run by this woman named Lisa Carver, she's like a huge inspiration because she's still active in that, like she still writes, she self-publishes, like she's still fucking punk, like she still does it to no fanfare and no money, basically.
yeah.
She never stopped. And I love the way that she writes because she's just so honest, even if it makes her look like a monster. And also a thing that I really liked about Roller Derby, so much of it is interview based, but like just you're not necessarily interviewing someone who's famous, just someone's mom or your friend.
Cool.
Or just someone who works somewhere. And it was I don't know, it was like refreshing to read that like, oh yeah, writing you don't have to sit and labor. You could actually just transcribe a conversation between two people and it's as compelling as like something that's thought out and written. You know what I mean?
Uncanned.
Yeah.
Like, that's so cool. That's just like a little less, like you said, effort, and then also just the sense that like, you're not trying to publicize anything. You're just having a conversation. You're not trying to sell anything, basically.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally there would be like, interviews with semi-famous people or famous people at the time in it, but it wasn't for the purposes of promoting anything, or like if somebody was trying to promote something, she would nag them about it.
Really?
Kind of thing. Yeah.
That's cool. And how long did this series go on? Do you know?
Roller Derby it was like the early to mid 90s, basically. There were 25 issues of it total. And yeah, she wrote a couple books that were, she was like traditionally published a couple times in the early 90s or mid 90s. And then now she just self-publishes stuff. She has a book I really recommend. It's called The Pahrump Report, like Pahrump, Nevada, which is just basically like her writing in real time about like divorcing her fourth husband.
Cool.
In like this random awful like fucking like desert shithole surrounded by all these lunatics in Nevada. Yeah.
Is she doing it with a sense of humor, or is it just
She
kind
is-
of straightforward?
No, she is very funny.
Yeah.
But like gallows humor kind of
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Was there any big takeaway from that story of the fourth divorce?
Well, for her, I don't know, because I think she got married again. But I mean, the takeaway is that like, I don't know, it's just everything she writes is just like a testament to just honesty.
Yeah.
Like the sort of things that like people would never say publicly or only say to like a close friend. She just says to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
like liberating.
It is liberating,
Yeah.
but it takes a skill to say it. You have to say it with your full chest out.
Yeah.
And like not have any sort of self-consciousness, because if people pick up the self-consciousness, they'll attack it.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think she has any self-consciousness, because before she even like did this zine, she was like a performance artist / musician that would do these like really bizarre, they would call them operas, but I don't, but just basically involved like just being completely naked and like, hitting people over the head and shit. Just like,
Yeah.
weird. shit.
I mean, that's so cool. And the fact, I mean, to prime yourself physically and then bring it to the page is it makes sense to me. I brought my little poetry book that I self-published, and the first edition's almost sold out, which is really cool.
He's fucking sick.
Yeah, cool, right? I just did it myself, and I was gonna maybe just thank everyone at the end, but hearing you talk about Lisa Crystal Carver self-publishing, when I got it, I was like, oh wait, so this is all a book is, huh?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just the spine, really, and then the cover art, whatever. But like, just by the intention of putting it together, you've created something that is like bigger than it's just you've created an organism. And it's kind of...
It's fucking cool to do it yourself.
Right?
'Cause you could sit around your entire life waiting for some dipshit to, like, deign to give you the opportunity to, everything is gatekept.
I know, and I have. Yeah. I've absolutely have.
So what made you just say fuck it and do it yourself?
Well, I actually, a literary agent did get in touch with me. He was a really nice guy, and he said, yeah, you should work on a book proposal about like a memoir about being a failed child actor growing up here in LA. And so I did that off and on for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to therapy. It was like putting my head in a bad place. And he and I worked really well together. It was really a cool thing, a really great guy. But by the time he was going to take it out, I was like, I hope to God this thing doesn't sell. It would take a mass amount of money for me to want to go into my childhood and my upbringing and even mine it for... I don't think there's enough interest in it, really, publicly or through myself. And so anyway, people didn't want it, and I was relieved. And then, my friend Darby Hudson, he's this Australian poet. He and I have become friends on the internet. He's kind of been self-publishing, and he inspired me to do it. And it was like, I mean, talk about effortless. It was like, this is just who I am, for better or worse.
Right.
This is what I want to say right now. And how cool to be able to bundle it up and attempt to say it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing, too, about going through traditional methods of media is that, you have to have a shtick to them. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You had to write about being a child star. It couldn't just be enough that, like, anything you want to write about is good enough. Everything has to have a fucking shtick.
That's right.
And so, but if you do it yourself, then, you can be the shtick.
That's right. No, I'm a walking shtick.
I mean, or just like perish the thought of something not being about my journey. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. No, I mean, totally. It could be a little more nonlinear and a little more like, hey, this is what I want to say to the world. And I think hopefully a few people want to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's been really rewarding seeing that, people are digging it, and it's going out into the world, and someday it'll be on a bargain store rack in the Goodwill, and someone will flip through it and like a few lines and then toss it off to the side again. And it's like, it's physical. Yeah. That's the other thing. A lot of my writing on the internet gets stolen, and then people use it to sell like real estate packages and stuff to draw traffic to their page. Mm-hmm. And so like just to take it offline felt really good. Yeah. That independent spirit, hearing about her doing that and continue to do that, I understand. Yeah,
she's like an adult woman that still has like a Patreon and shit.
That's so cool. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, talk about eliminating parts of the supply chain. Self-publishing allows you to do that. Yeah. Say something truer to spirit in hopes of catching something that other people want to hear.
Well, that's why I always gravitated towards zines, which, I mean, in fairness, they were, their renaissance was like, slightly before I was a teenager, so they were accessible to me. But yeah, it's like the fact that if you had a zine, then you weren't really beholden to anybody. People could write about whatever the fuck they want. I mean, some of the stuff in roller derby is just like they're writing about their neighbors. Like how their neighbors are insane. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Penguin is not going to allow you to publish a book about how your neighbors are insane. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And also, it's like the economics of the industry are so stupid. It's like, why would you not just do it yourself and say what you want to say?
Yeah, exactly. You mean because you're never going to get anything off the back end anyway?
Someone's going to be like, here, I'll give you...
I could wait 10 years, for $40,000.
That's right, if you're lucky.
Exactly.
Someone goes, here's $1,000, and we'll take out an ad in the LA Times that, and it's like, all right, or I could just do what I want to do and
Yeah.
skip the $1,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's really cool. I love that your theme is magazines.
Yeah. I'm a big magazine.
You and I are like the same age, and I would treasure coming home. I would know the day of the week that it would normally come, that my Sports Illustrated would come.
Mm-hmm.
And they had really beautiful long-form journalism back then. I'd get home, eat a bowl of cereal, and read my Sports Illustrated just slobbering over the table, and it was like the purest form of pleasure to my brain. Sugar and words. I remember reading one about this couple. They were divers, and their whole goal was to just see how deep into the ocean they could dive. And it was like this very tragic story, kind of a love story too. And yeah, I read that 25 years ago, and it sticks with me to this day.
Right.
And you said, yeah, you throw magazines away, which, yeah, that's so interesting. I had a guest on. She says when she Bridie, she says when she finishes her journal, she throws them away. And
Why?
She just says like she got out what she needed to say.
Fair point.
Yeah. Yeah. And like she's not going to read them again if she's honest with herself, and she doesn't want anyone else reading them.
Right.
I tend to be more attached to things, but that idea of like it's that moment of expression that's just as important than anything else.
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing it for, I guess. If you're doing it for yourself, for the purposes of like lessening your anxiety, depression, etc. Yeah, like journaling without a purpose is good. I got like I don't even know what you call it, writing pilled or whatever. By like having writing be my job for so many years, like it's very difficult for me to like journal without thinking of there being an audience.
Yes.
Which is punishing.
Is it?
Yeah. Or just writing in general.
Because you've heard back from the audience enough?
Well, I just
mean... You know who they are?
Or just like the idea of writing without there being an audience doesn't make sense anymore.
No.
And I hate that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it wasn't about that at the beginning.
Yeah, I guess.
It was just a need to get your life out onto...
I don't know what it was like in the beginning. I know what it's like now. It's painful. I fucking hate writing.
Yeah.
I loathe it.
Yeah.
It's the bane of my fucking existence when people say they love writing. What are you? Yeah, I don't know. What are you writing? A cookbook? You know what I mean? It's painful.
They love the ritual around it.
I guess.
The coffee they go get or
Sure. I find it difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't get easier.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I think Murakami in his book, What I Talk About When I Talk About Running, he says like a writer accumulates a toxin in their body, and some people try to exercise that toxin through drinking or all the conventional writerly things. He was an ultra marathon runner, or maybe still is. I think he's still alive. But that idea of like accumulating a toxin through writing is it feels accurate.
I mean, I know about ingesting toxins while writing. Yeah. I mean, I'm an alcoholic. Well, I'm in recovery now, but I'm still an alcoholic. And for years, like the only way I could write was to be drunk. And I think because, being drunk, it allows you the opportunity to be completely honest, I guess, without worrying about how other people perceive you or, how things will be perceived.
Yeah.
And so when I stopped drinking, it took a very long time for me to like get better at not worrying that I'm going to get canceled.
Yeah, right.
Not that I would like say anything inflammatory, and I mean it's an irrational fear.
Yeah.
But it's just like, nitpicking every single sentence is just like, is there something problematic? Not problematic, but like, is there something that could make people judge me here?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a really intense period of time where that was like where everything was hyper scrutinized.
Like cripplingly?
Yeah, and it was kind of a game for a lot of people to just find the flaw, find the incongruity morally in things. And it's like, hey, turns out that's what makes a story.
Right.
It turns out that's what makes a human.
Right.
Is the fact, the imperfections. And I think people are starting to come to that awareness. But yeah, I know what you mean, just the idea of like, it's like on the one hand, you are writing from an honest place if you're, under the influence, but on the other, it's clouded by like a certain neediness or an ego thing or a sloppiness that.
And it was definitely clouded. When I would get drunk, I would get very, what's the word? Like just sort of, I mean, sad sacky.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was very like,
self-pitying.
Self-pitying. Thank you.
Yeah.
There we go. Yes.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would just get drunk and I would just like, lament the fact that like the fucking entertainment industry is not in meritocracy and like, all this shit.
Yeah, because it feels really good feeling bad for yourself when you're drunk.
It does.
Until it
does.
turns that corner into just ineffable despair.
Yeah.
And then you're like, that's despair. It's not easy to come back from that one. Yeah, so I get you. But yeah, so cool.
Cool.
I mean, cool just exploring, I don't know, the idea of things and how this conversation about books has led into these other avenues.
That's true.
Not cool, like let's go surfing cool.
Or let's get drunk cool.
Yeah, or let's get drunk cool. Yeah. I just asked my friend if he wanted to meet up to get nachos,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't drink anymore either. It's been like 3.5 years.
That's what's up.
Yeah, and so I'm like, hey, you want to meet up and get nachos? Because just as involved, just as fun. A lot of variation and picking out the right chip and all the rest of it.
And also, alcohol's poison, and there's this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big one.
I think my new thing is like I'm off synthetics, man.
Yeah,
You know
me
what I mean?
too.
Yeah.
Plant medicine only. Once in a while. Yeah. I'm with you. So, what else do you have in this pile as we're moving along?
This is also from the same era for me. This book isn't necessarily a magazine, but it's written by the people that wrote a magazine or a zine called Ben is Dead from the early to late 90s.
This is called Retro Hell.
Yes. Retro Hell. It's like an A to Z book about basically the 70s and 80s, which was like the period that these people were, coming of age. So it's not necessarily like the book itself, because the book itself is basically like a book version of like I Love the 70s. It predated it, and it's much smarter than it. But I mean, I guess I'm just alerting people to the existence of Ben is Dead magazine.
Ben is Dead.
Yeah, which I enjoyed similarly to Roller Derby. Roller Derby was more focused. It was like Lisa's magazine, and she wrote most of the stuff in it. Ben is Dead was more like a ton of people wrote on it. And an issue of Ben is Dead is the only thing my mother's ever confiscated from me when I was like a teenager. She found the Bedtime Stories issue of Ben is Dead in my room. And there's like, they talk about sex in it or whatever. And she took it, which is just like, was very odd. Because
of all things.
Yeah, she was never, she would let me like drive her car to Los Angeles when I was in high school. Like, my parents would let me watch anything on satellite television. Like, there's never any censorship in my house.
Yeah.
But I think that there was something so, I don't know, so like feral in like the sexuality that she read, that she decided to take this away from me.
Yeah, it was like maybe accurate or something. It wasn't like the prepackaged kind of idea of sexuality. It might have like caught a real hint of like what really happens or something.
It could be that, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But this is another,
or maybe she just liked it and she was like, I want to read this, but I need to justify stealing it from you.
That is a good point. I know Debbie likes to read.
Okay.
Yeah,
so maybe this was her way in.
I know Debbie likes Chuck Palahniuk.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
What do you think of him?
I don't. But I'm not Debbie, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was like trying to remember. I read a couple of his books, and one of them sticks in my head. Had a really good idea, but I was like, maybe I'll like him now. And I grabbed one of his books at the used book sale and flipped it open. And I was like, oh, no, I don't.
It's still not there.
It's like the fetishization of these objects and details that I just like, my brain isn't that interested in.
Yeah, exactly.
But he wrote this book, Survivor, that I think has a really good message. Just the fact that like there's this kind of conglomerate that has conceived of every single media sensation that could come about. This character escapes from a cult, and they plug him in. They give him the fake teeth, the steroids, the motivational speaking courses, and like just that idea, I feel like is really resonant even today.
Well, especially today, I would imagine.
Especially today, like one weird TikTok can get you, a big talent agency behind you, and they're like, all right, you're the weird Chick-fil-A girl, let's run this for like a few months.
I wish I remember the details, but I believe that literally happened.
Yeah.
And that some girl that experienced some sort of insane trauma.
Oh, she experienced insane trauma? Because there was a girl working at Chick-fil-A. She said something funny to her sister on camera. It went mega viral. She has charisma. She's 16, 17. And yeah, she's like with a big talent agency.
I mean, like
a
girl that was like kept in a basement for a while, or like experienced some insane sort of parental trauma.
Okay.
Somehow started popping off on TikTok.
Okay.
And then like got an agent and shit, and then like had to just like I don't know, like, have all these public things for for victim awareness or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Right
away.
Yeah. When did I don't know what I read that in. I think I read it in the Reporter.
And like you don't even bat an eye hearing that. It's like, yeah, of course that would happen. Yeah, of course someone's story would be exploited right away.
Yeah. To just pick the woman out from the basement that she was imprisoned in.
Before they even put the blanket around her shoulders, there's a business card in her hand. It's like, call me. You're gonna need representation.
I gotta look back into that. Yeah. What was her name?
Yeah. No. There's probably been 10 since her. It's like.
That's true. She might have just been patient zero.
Yeah, patient zero
for exploiting victims.
Yeah, via the media. So Retro Hell, it's
it's been out of print since when did this fucking thing come out? 1997.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a lot, like different. It's alphabetical, and then like Russ Meyer, Miami Vice, Micronauts, et cetera. It's basically it describes what something that was a culture phenomenon at the time is, but then also a lot of it is just people giving their personal stories about it.
That's so cool because I mean, as I'm looking at it, there's all these little names and details of things that like have already been lost to time.
Yeah.
I don't recognize a lot of this, but there's explanations that are going to tell you about it. My friend told me like how even today's most bland diary entry is going to be interesting to someone 30 years from now. I've brought it up on the podcast.
Because they won't understand any of the contextual stuff.
Yeah, and their lives will function with different technology and different... and it's something that I brought up on the podcast, but something that I will continue to bring up because it's just fascinating. And it kind of underpins this idea that like you are living through a unique time and space, even if it feels mundane.
Well, something that I loved about Ben is Dead magazine is that it made me want to move to Los Angeles.
No kidding.
Specifically Los Angeles circa, like 1995.
Yeah. Oh,
because it just seemed so rad. Like, everyone was like fucked up, having fun, making art, and like living in Echo Park or whatever for like $300 a month.
Yeah.
It seemed like
it was a Sheryl Crow song.
It was just so glamorous to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. Well, 95, I had just started being a failed child actor, so my mom would drive me into the city for auditions. And I remember just kind of being scared of the city. But also, like, the adults seemed like they had a pep in their step. Right. Especially the young ones. I remember, like, just seeing the way they moved and, like, they seemed like they were, like, fun people. Right. Yeah, it was a really distinct feling. And
I think, everyone was able to have fun because they weren't being crushed by having to have, 4 jobs and, like, the knowledge that they'll never afford a house, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Yeah. It's the same, it's the same as, like, there being a bunch of sick art in New York in the 70s because you could live there for nothing. You didn't have to have a fucking job.
That's right.
I mean, art has suffered quite a great deal by the fact that, no one can afford anything.
Yeah, LA was cheap and had a plentiful amount of land and sunlight, and that's what made it ripe for experimentation. Yeah. And now you can't experiment. Like when half of your income's going to rent, like you better you're not going to take risks as an artist.
It also just means that the only people that can afford to be a full-time artist are fucking trust fund kids. Yeah. Or, you know what I mean? Yeah, I do. People that, I won't say that, like, I'm not going to say Kroll Show is bad because it's not bad. It's good. Yeah. But, like his dad's a billionaire. His dad's a billionaire. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that you can't make art if you're the descendant of inherited wealth. Right. But I'm saying a lot of it is bad.
That's right.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because these people have no actual life experience.
It's a bourgeois sensibility. Yeah. And and now they've crafted an entire narrative of a generation even that isn't accurate. But we have to buy into it because that's what we've been hypnotized into.
And also, you can't expect that television is going to represent the average person when it's being, written by all these fucking Ivy Leaguers that
exactly.
don't know how to drive a car.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
They come here from New York, Josh.
Yeah,
and they don't learn how to
York.
drive a car. They can't do their own laundry.
They don't need to.
They don't know you can drink the water out of the tap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's someone said on the internet, they said like there used to be patrons of the arts.
Yes.
Who would like pay artists to live and create. And then at some point they realized, their kids could just do it and they could keep it in house. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
That's so damning. That's why I said damn.
Foiled again.
Yeah. 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 No, I mean, people, I guess with self-publishing my poetry book, a few people internationally have bought it, and the shipping costs, if you buy it from me, are insane.
Yeah, they're
it's
exponential.
Like $80 to send it overseas.
Yeah.
And I'm getting mad. I'm like, why are you spending $80? Like, why are you doing this? Like, as someone who doesn't have a lot of money, I'm like, hey, do you know what you could buy for $80? You're like insulting me by doing this.
But in fairness, I'm sure those people are used to it.
Right.
Because of where they live or geographically.
Oh, got it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, paying the cost.
Yeah, you would get used to it.
Okay.
You would think.
Yeah, okay, maybe that's it.
So
and maybe they have healthcare too, so they're like...
There we go. So they're getting that on the back end.
Right.
But I'm saying, if I lived in a country where like every time I bought something overseas it cost $80, I would just buy 3 things a year.
Yeah.
Maybe they want your fucking book so bad that'll be one of the 3 things they buy that year.
That's true.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, that's pretty sick. All right, enjoy it. I take it back. Enjoy it. Have fun. Thank you. All right. Well, yeah. Moving through your selections.
Oh, my last book.
Yeah.
This is a more recent zine collection. In that, when was this published? This might have been published like last year. No, 2 years ago. But this is a compilation of the zine called Shotgun Seamstress, which is from the late 90s or the mid to late thousands.
Okay.
So slightly after my time.
Yeah.
But I'm a sucker for a zine compilation. And I saw it in a bookstore. I was like, what's this all about? And it's about, being a black punk.
Cool.
Which is like a super, underrepresented group.
Yes.
Globally, everywhere. And so, the whole zine is just like the chick that runs it, Osa, she's a black punk. She interviews other black punks. She tells you about historical black punks throughout history. So,
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's sick.
And I'm guessing because every cool thing, they probably had their hand in the foundations of punk, like the black community.
Oh yeah, well that's why I like LA punk more than than New York punk, like in the 70s, because the LA punk community was like very
multicultural.
It was extremely multicultural.
Yeah.
I'm sure you talked to Chris about this, maybe.
Chris Estrada? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. We touched on punk, but no, I mean that documentary, The Decline of Western Civilization by Penelope Spheres. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Latino element is huge. But yeah,
before
in LA
punk became hardcore, there were women, there were queer people, there were people of all races. Yeah, it was fucking sick.
That is sick.
And then hardcore just made it all white dudes from the suburbs.
Damn. Can we ever get away from them?
Yeah.
Where everyone's trying. And by them, I mean me. Can we escape me?
But if you like punk in general, which I do, and then, I learned a lot reading this book.
I love it.
And then also there's like old favorites, like Vaginal Cream Davis is this drag queen from LA that was around around in the 90s that I had learned about it. She would write for Ben is Dead. And there's like interviews with her in this.
Oh, nice.
And like Mick Collins from Dirt Bombs, Gories. Yeah.
Cool. That's it's also cool that it's a zine collection put into a book, which like you and I were talking about the humble quality of making your own zine, that you get to express yourself, whatever. And it's like just this idea that like, well, yeah, you express yourself enough times and eventually it could compound into a larger piece. Yeah. Not that a larger piece is more valid than the original first zine, but just, like your efforts start to cohere into something that's maybe even larger than you first intended.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know what like the readership it was of Shotgun Seamstress during its original run, But I do know that, like, since I think Soft Skull put this out, like, I've seen it in multiple bookstores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So that's sick.
Shotgun Seamstress.
And I fucking, what was it? I paid the $40, dude.
Did you really?
I did.
Okay. I mean,
and I hate
that says
retail.
everything.
And I hate retail.
If you listen to this interview, you know what that says. That's about as strong of a book recommendation as we've had on the show. Megan Koester paid retail.
But it's also, it's like
book.
when we live in a world in which, like, something I like about our generation. God, I sound so fucking old.
Talking about
But I mean, let's say a reason why I guess maybe I pity younger generations is that there's less like thrill of discovery and like hunt in them that we had before the internet was everywhere.
Well, the internet sends you so much shit these days.
The internet sends you what it thinks you want.
Right.
Whereas you read something like, like you read like an old compilation of zines, compendium of zines or whatever, and you like find out like, oh, that sounds interesting. What if I looked more into that? Instead of like Spotify saying like, have you considered listening to Jesus and Mary Chain or whatever?
And then you're like, yeah, this is good enough. And then you're like, yeah, I like this. But it's like, if you had just walked past that, what could you have found on your own that you would have loved?
And also, yeah, if you're reading like an interview with someone, then you get an idea of their like mindset, what's important to them. And then that gives you an idea of what their art would be like. And that gives you even more of an impetus to be like, I want to see what their art's like.
Yeah.
If you're just getting like just the recommendation of just like, listen to this song, like all I'm looking at is just a link or a picture. Like there's no context.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone made that statement about like how they don't think AI will ever take over art for that reason, is like AI doesn't have lore. I think my friend Cy Swoon said it on Instagram. Yeah, it doesn't have lore. And like just that idea of like, yeah, we don't just fall in love with the artwork, we fall in love with the resonance of what else that person has to say or how they move through the world.
Yeah.
Or the things that we don't like about them, like there's a strength to the humanity that you don't get if it's just thrown in your face.
Exactly.
In like 15-second clips, like most of this podcast will be.
Well, something else that I think about, like kids these days, like they never have to wonder.
Right.
Whereas like we had,
there's a luxury to not Googling something.
Right.
Right.
Well, I would read a zine and I would be like, oh wow, this musician sounds cool. I wonder what their music sounds like. But then it's in order for me to find out, I would have to, I guess, drive an hour and a half to like the next biggest town and like go to some asshole behind a computer and be like, can you special order? And it'll take 4 weeks me to get, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
It's just, there's something like so pure about like the wondering, like, oh wow, I bet it's really good. If I ever experience it, I bet I'll like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It reminds me of when I was like 11 or 12. Speaking of punk, the Butthole Surfers had that one song that kind of punched through.
Oh, Pepper.
Pepper.
Yeah.
Right? And we talked about that book, Our Band Could Be Your Life. I don't know if you read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oral history of a pretty grimy underground punk scene. And I heard it once as like an 11 or 12-year-old, and I was like, I love this song. It had all these weird elements to it, and it was like kind of cynical and strange. And I just heard it once, and I was like on the hunt for it, but there was nowhere to find it.
Right.
I was just an 11-year, 12-year-old kid, no internet. I talked to a friend at school. I said, hey, have you heard this song? He said, Cinnamon and Sugar. My friend hadn't heard of it, so that was out. That was all I remembered was Cinnamon and Sugar, those lyrics. And the fact that, here I am so many years later once again, and that sticks with me is kind of, the point of wonder that you're talking about.
Because then when you finally found it, were you not extremely fucking stoked?
Stoked.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like such a satisfaction.
Yeah.
Treasure hunt.
Right.
That's what it is, just these treasure hunts. And for whatever, our brains are primed for treasure hunt, because living in the wild, you're looking for the fruit and the
and I think that's why people become addicted to their phones too, is because we are programmed to treasure hunt, and so we just think if we keep scrolling, like eventually we're going to find something that satiates that desire. But you're never going to feel the same satisfaction as if you went on a true treasure hunt. Because there's never going to be anything that like delights and surprises you the same way as organically finding something in the real world, and then like or I would say organically discovering something in the real world, and then just finally finding it yourself, like expending the effort to do it yourself.
Yeah, or even like the cool feeling of not finding it.
Yeah.
It can be really sad, but the wonder that comes with it, or the lesson that you have to create out of it if it doesn't arrive. But I do think I've just been staring at my phone for 10 years looking for something that's never going to arrive.
Right.
Which is a maddening feeling.
Well, yeah, and it's just, I don't know. It's making everything worse.
It is. Well, and I think that's why the VR just doesn't continue. It just doesn't take off. They keep saying it's going to take off, and a new one comes out and it doesn't, because it's like, yeah, you can be wowed visually, you can have your brain chemicals drained, but yeah, there's nothing like the real thing. Ain't nothing like it.
Because it's almost like edging, basically.
Right.
Like using your phone. Like you're never actually going to, come.
Come.
So it's just like you're never going to find true satisfaction with it. So nothing's ever good enough.
Right.
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 And so all my friends that are on like, dating apps and shit, where it's just, I watch them swipe in real time, and it's like, that person seems reasonable, but it's just like, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, there's the illusion that eventually at some point there's going to be some huge payoff.
Right.
But at the end of the day, all it is just a collection of human beings.
That's right.
So, you know what I mean?
And you've gamified something that
belongs in
humanity. 3 dimension.
Yeah.
And like the very flaws that years later you realize you fell in love with, you would swipe past.
And also, I mean, like most reasonable people, you would be like, oh, hey, do you want to engage in a relationship with someone who has judged you entirely on your looks?
Right.
They'd be like, no. I was like, but that's what you're doing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But all you're doing is, somebody might write something trite about like how they love coffee or whatever the fuck.
But you're not seeing that first.
Yeah.
You're seeing them first.
Exactly.
That's why there needs to be an app where you just smell them first.
That's why people need to walk outside. For Christ's sake. Perish the thought.
Yeah, I know. There was just recently the Bumble CEO said, we're going to train your AI to find a compatible person through their AI. And it's like, hey, like the richness of your life is passing you by. Going on a bad date is still such a more valid experience of living than like trying to precisely find an accurate one through, algorithms. Like it's like, this is your life. Like,
and to assume that even, in this like nascent, like primitive AI system that we have now, I mean, yes, it is slightly complex, terrifyingly so, but we're in the early days of it. To assume that it can synthesize everything that makes a human being yet is insane.
Insane.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I believe in the mystery of people. Someone just posted today how they asked an AI machine, is it okay to smoke cigarettes while you're pregnant? And it said 2 or 3 a day is fine. So I think AI still needs a little work.
I mean, in fairness, 2 or 3 a day probably is fine.
Yeah,
just think
French
about the
do
boomers.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Sadly, they're still alive. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. With the windows rolled up in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was just a thing about this boomer who ran Ticketmaster who doesn't want the subway going under the 405 freeway because it's somewhere near his Bel Air mansion. Mm-hmm. Like he's up on the hill. He's so far from this going on, and you just, oh God, we got to get past your generation. We really do. This 405 that's just taken years off people's lives, ended people's lives. The freeway in LA that everyone hates.
Yeah.
It's like to put public transit under it. Everyone's afraid of like public transit because it would bring public people together.
Yes.
And they'd cooperate.
And also, I mean, perish the thought of a poor being able to easily get to Santa Monica.
Yeah, that's right.
Or Malibu.
That's right.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, yeah. God forbid
right.
that we let people see the ocean without spending money.
Now, it sucks that, a lot of problems will be solved when boomers die because the kids these days, they're overall pretty fucking chill. They're all like, like queer socialists or whatever, and that's what's up.
Yeah, that's what's up.
But like when the boomers die, there's not going to be a future.
Yeah, so I know. Like, they're taking us with them, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, they're not
If only they die now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, but they're not going to let us enjoy life if they can't.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of good ones too, but just the overwhelming narrative and the people in power and all that.
Right.
If any are listening now who like this podcast, we like you.
No, I have plenty of boomer friends.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Overwhelmed. The ones.
We are of the first generation to have not done better than our parents. You know
That's right.
Saying?
Yeah, and it's kind of cool seeing the younger generations who weren't even born with that illusion to get to kind of really express themselves, like you said.
Well, yeah,
socialist
and that's
queers.
what's radicalized them.
Yeah, they'll get the job done even if we didn't. Well, Megan, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I talked so much.
No, I felt like I've probably talked more this podcast than any other one.
I think it's probably also because we haven't seen each other for 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. You need a format to get together with a friend in LA.
I love making content with friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what a waste it would be if we just hung out. We do have some listener write-ins for book recommendations. Would you mind hanging out for a couple of them?
For sure.
Okay, cool. So thanks everyone for writing in to the show. We've really appreciated all your recommendations. Keep sending them to turekbooks@gmail.com. I think we're just going to keep a revolving door on it. So send it whenever you want. It's been really fun reading everyone, even if we can't talk about everyone. And I want to read a couple that kind of jumped out recently. This one is coming from Dana Wordmuller at Dana Word on Instagram. I recommend West of the Revolution by Claudio Sant. It covers what was happening in American history during the Revolution circa 1776, but west of the colonies where that action was mainly taking place. It talks about the indigenous communities and how they navigated the English, Spanish, French, and Russian interests and actions, as well as other native tribes, in the territories not directly involved in the Revolution unfolding in the eastern colonies. Fascinating look at what was happening in parallel to the colonists' efforts for independence from England. You can tag me. I love what you're doing. Keep up the reviews and other good stuff. Thank you, Dana. That sounds fascinating.
That sounds fucking sick as hell. As Californians, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're pretty recent to the bloodshed.
This horrific union.
Yeah, this horrific union.
I mean, the bloodshed isn't recent, but I mean, in terms of making it legal, I guess.
Wounded Knee, I think that was 1893 or closer than you think.
Right.
We're not my grandfather was born in 1901. My grandfather. So it's he was among settlers. There was a thriving collection of civilization on this continent before the colonizers came.
Yeah,
and the more we learn from them now and from their history, I think maybe the closer we could get to rectifying some of this madness.
I mean,
because this country is cursed, and it's cursed because of its founding, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't.
You concur?
I concur with your opinion, if you can believe that. I think we should give LA back to Mexico.
Yeah.
We are in Mexico right now.
Yeah, Mexico, and then the Chumash and the Tongva people prior to them.
Right.
Okay, and our second write-in is, hey, I honestly enjoy the pod so much. Thank you for making it. I have always loved reading and talking about books, but the unread book guilt is real, so I appreciate your approach. Last year was my first in a new career as a high school English teacher, and it was brutal. But I had a bit of a breakthrough reading Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds with them. It's a great story with themes of grief and wrestling with nonviolence, while also wonderfully poetic. There were a dozen pages where he did something with words and formatting that I'd never seen before. It's so creative. Anyway, a fun and quick read. Sounds great. And if it got you through a difficult transition in life, I mean, that's the beauty of books.
And I like being consistently surprised by, or learning you don't have to write in the same linear fashion that you've been taught.
Yeah, you can mess with form and function, and it might really resonate with people.
Yeah, I like a recent book that I really liked. It's called Creep by Miriam Gerba. She writes like nobody else that I've ever read.
Really?
And I'm 40 years old, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll add that to the list.
Just in terms of not everything is just, it's not paragraph. It's almost like writing like you're thinking.
Yeah,
and
intuitive.
that it's just sometimes, a paragraph will be one line, two lines, or just an aside, or, Yeah, it's just an interesting way of writing. And
Yeah.
she's also a very good writer. So
Cool. What's it called again?
it's called Creep by Miriam Gerba.
Okay, adding it to the list. The endless list. Megan, it's been so great catching up with you, hearing about your books. I love that you brought in a theme of like magazines or zines that cohere into books. I really appreciate your thoughts and efforts in all this, and it's great seeing you.
Well, thanks for having me on my first video podcast.
All right, we'll get some clips out of this and send them your way.
Fantastic.
Clear it with legal first. All right. This has been another episode of Turek Books. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's been so rewarding hearing from you and continuing this journey of talking about books. All right. Take care. Until next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Turek Books. Be sure to like, subscribe, thumbs up, any kind of thing that could help us get listened to or watched by more people. We really appreciated having you and hope to see you again next week with a new guest and plenty of books. Take care until then.